Hey everybody, welcome again to another episode of Around the Bases. I'm Connor Kerpat, joined by Zach Musso yet again. And real quick, before we get into it, I want to give another shout out to Jimmy Joseph Ware, hooked me up with this awesome hat. Might be a little hard to tell with my lighting right now. Yeah, you can see it good. Couch Coach hat.
Beautiful.
Thanks again for the hookup, Jimmy Joseph Ware. If you're looking for some great gear, go check him out. But let's get right into the video. Now, it's spring training. So there's not like a ton to talk about, but we still got some stuff to dive into. And the most important thing going on in baseball right now in spring training is the fact that there are some rule changes. One of them being the pitch clock, the implementation of the pitch clock, and the implementation of larger bases. Zach, let me know what you think of how both of them have worked out so far.
Well, first of all, I'd just like to let everyone know that my Twitter was reinstated, and so I am back at
I'm
Zach.
sure a lot of people were wondering where you
I'm
were for
sure
a while.
everyone is probably wondering. It's probably silent on your Twitter feeds, but the new rule changes, the pitch clock. I love it, man. I love it. Game times have been decreased to 2 hours and 39 minutes on average. That's awesome. And everyone's like, oh, it eliminates baseball. No, it eliminates the fat in the middle of the game where nothing's happening. I don't need to see Pete Alonso readjusted batting gloves 65 times. Like, we're good. I love that. The kinks, like the way the Braves Red Sox game ended, where the batter wasn't looking at the pitcher, so it was strike three. That stuff's all going to be worked out in spring training. Reducing game time is awesome, especially for me who loves to watch baseball games. The less time in a baseball game, the more people are going to watch. It's pretty simple like that. That's the most substantial rule change, and honestly, it's the best. MLB has made a good decision for once. It's the best rule change or best real decision from the league office in a long, long time.
Yeah, I don't hate it. I think it is good for the game in the sense that I think it's going to get more casual fans invested into it as well. Because every time you talk to a casual fan, the complaint always is, well, I kind of like baseball, but I just find it to be so slow and so boring. I think finally this might help some of those people get into it because, the fact of having that pitch clock there, I think does make it speed up a lot because you figure he's throwing the next pitch usually in about 10 seconds, right? And in the past, it's probably been like a 30-second average, I would guess. The only thing I wonder is how this is going to affect the game, not in the sense of making it go quicker, but you got to imagine this might tire out pitchers a little bit more if they're throwing a lot quicker. Could that affect them potentially injury wise? I don't know. I'm not, who knows? Also, I wonder how this could affect them as far as run scoring and like guys getting on base a lot more. Because you got to imagine if those pitchers are getting a little bit more fatigued, a little bit more frustrated, they might let the ball hang a little bit more in the middle of the zone. Could that potentially extend the game to the same amount as if pitch, probably not the same amount, but you know what I mean? So if like a
Yeah.
pitcher were to take their time and wait and throw their pitches, as opposed to runners getting on base a lot more often, I wonder if that's going to end up evening out, if you know what I mean. I feel like I'm not describing it well enough. My
No,
thought
no,
that
I got you.
you know what
I
I'm
do
saying?
think there's benefits on both sides, as you see. Like the pitch clock, because you have to throw the ball in 15 seconds. If there's a guy on base, you have to throw the ball in 20 seconds. But the batter has to be in the box looking at the pitcher with 8 seconds left. So the pitcher has 8 seconds there, theoretically, where they could dominate. Max Scherzer faced Joey the other day, the big Nationals guy, Joey Meneses. Great guy. Struck him out in 27 seconds. So the pitcher's in total control of the pace, which is a good thing. But like you said, they're going to fatigue, which means velocity could be down, which is a good thing because velocity has spiked to all times high. And so I think they see there's benefits on both sides. The pitcher's in total control, but they're not going to necessarily last longer, which could make it better for the hitter. And some hitters probably like to like stand in there. Like you kind of you're more in rhythm. I feel like the game more has a rhythm to it. And with that and the shift band rule, I see there's balances on both sides. I think that's the positive here of the rule change. We have no idea how this is going to play out. My guess is it's very similar, and the only real benefit you see is shortened games.
Yeah, I like what you mentioned there about the velocity change. I think we'll definitely see that. And I think we're going to see a lot more offense this year, an uptick in hits, just general hits of, singles, doubles, things like that. Because not only are we removing the pitch clock, we also remove the shift, which I think when you put those two things together, it's going to combine for a lot more offense. I'm curious how I'm sure it's not going to really affect the home run game, but I think like as far as just guys hitting for contact, I think it's going to really change the game this year for a lot of teams.
Yeah, no, I think that's interesting. And guys like Jeff McNeil are fun to watch because, like, there's some guys who really took advantage of the shift. Like, you couldn't shift them because they could poke the ball everywhere. But if you watch some games early from the bits and pieces of spring training games I watched, that like first second base hole, where like growing up, the lefties pull singles right into right field, that's back and that's fun to see. Like
Mm-hmm.
Vogelback was ripping some through there. I saw
Yeah.
Matt Olson
Yeah,
rip some.
two, right? I think Vogelback had two
Yeah,
singles through there, right?
yeah, because there's no, you can like any rules that come in, people find hacks. Like if you really want to, you could put your left fielder, move him all the way over as like a deep second baseman. But then you leave a big hole in left field, and batters are skilled enough to go the other way if they need to. But it's nice to see that hole back. I like it. And the one thing it shows off is like if you have an athletic second baseman or shortstop, they're gonna make some plays now. Like Jeff McNeil go flying through the hole. You have some of the more athletic Gold Glovers, Altuve go diving through the hole. Tommy Edman and shortstop. You need athleticism now. It's really going to show off the skills of the players, which is awesome. It's bringing it back to more traditional baseball.
Right. And I also wonder how this is going to affect a lot more teams that have and pitchers who pitch for ground balls. Because we've seen that in the past, right? A lot of times I feel like baseball now has shifted from the regular, star-studded strikeout pitcher to just putting out a pitcher who hits a lot of throws into a lot of ground balls, which has been really good in the past when you have the shift, because a lot of times it becomes really predictable. Guys, someone like Anthony Rizzo might pull the ball, hit it to the right field space where the second baseman is dropped all the way back because of the shift, and it's an easy out. But now, I mean, if you have a guy in who is a pitcher that ends up throwing a lot of ground balls, that might not transition well into this new era of shifted and the pitch clock. I don't know. It's going to be really, really interesting. I think this is the biggest change, not just the pitch clock. I know a lot of people are focusing on the pitch clock, but I think the shift in general is going to be huge for the game this year.
Yeah, no doubt. And like spring training is perfect for this because you don't get this in other sports, really. They're working out all the kinks. So by the time regular season comes around, you're going to forget some of these rules. Like the bases moving, becoming 3 inches bigger. It's like a bigger thing for runners, advantage for the runners, injury risk. Not really a big thing people got to focus on. But the pitcher timeout rule, like where the batter only has one timeout per at bat, and the pitcher can only step off the rubber twice, and if they do it a third time and don't pick the guy off, it's a balk. Those things are interesting. The pitcher stepping off the rubber is a little. I'm not a huge fan of that because now it feels like it's kind of changing the game because you step over twice, that third time the runner can just freely steal. So
Mhm.
I think it's cool because the stolen base has been eliminated from baseball. The art of a stolen base is almost gone. You want to see that back because they're fun. Hit a single,
Yep.
fly to second. Like I want to see more stolen bases. So I think Rob Manfred kind of deserves some credit
Yep.
for the first time here because these rules seem like they're going to make the game better. And as baseball purists like us, that's what we want to see.
Yeah, it's really awesome because I think one of the big I mean, it's been a pro and a con for the past couple years, but it's been that long ball, that home run game. You've seen a lot of teams that compete and win championships and make deep runs in the past few years are teams that are just completely led by the home run ball. Like, perfect example is the Phillies last year, right? That team was basically a home run or bust team. It felt like a lot of times with having Kyle Schwarber, Bryce Harper, Rhys Hoskins, felt like they would either go deep or they weren't going to do much of anything at all. And we've seen it with a lot of other teams too, like the New York Yankees are a big team that's been like that over the past couple of years. But now it really feels like we're getting that old baseball back, that old nitty gritty baseball where you got to just grind out at bats, punch the ball through the gap, steal a ton of bases to generate offense. And it's fun because maybe we'll see the return of guys who, types of players who are able to steal bases a ton. You know what I mean? Steal, like, for example, Anthony Volpe the other day stole second, stole third on the next pitch. Maybe we're going to see a lot more of that, which I think is really good for the game. And again, hugely changes the game because if a guy's able to steal a lot more often, you don't need to hit the home run ball as much. So I'm really, really excited for this season. I think it's going to be one of the more unpredictable seasons that we've seen in a really long time. There might be a couple teams that come out of nowhere and are really good, or at least pretty decent. Like I think a team that might really benefit from all this stuff is a team like the Cleveland Guardians, team that's just hugely generated on producing contact all the time. I think they might really benefit from this because you don't need guys like you got a guy like Jose Ramirez there to hit the home run ball every once in a while. But besides him, I mean, you got a team just made up of contact hitters, and that might be huge for them not having to shift anymore. And I think it's going to be really fun. The same thing with the bases being bigger. They're a fast team. They can steal a ton of bases. So this could be a really huge season for them just because of the rules change now.
I think any team is like analytically advanced. This fits perfectly because they already found 50 ways to kind of come through this. Teams that walk a ton too, guys in the bases, even more, there's more pressure on guys in the bases now because it's there's new rules here. You put guys on base, good things happen. The old baseball adage. Now that's more true than ever. I'm really interested to see the lefties like the Anthony Rizzos and the Joey Gallos. Anthony Rizzo had one of the worst batting average on balls in play last year because it excludes home runs in that batting average. because when he put the ball in play, he grounded out into the little right field hole. Now there's no right field hole there. Those big lefty sluggers, like a guy like Freddie Freeman who hit 326 with the shift as a pure lefty hitter. What is he going to hit without the shift? He's got every hole to work with. It's going to be fun because these skilled hitters can really show off, hit to all sides of the field now. Because you can sort of shift. Like if you're the second baseman, you can still stand on the dirt, kind of like that right field hole. They're going to burn you. They'll hit it somewhere else. They know
Hmm.
what they're doing. So it's going to be fun to watch because it's, like you said, unpredictability. Kind of why we love March Madness every year. Unpredictability is what makes it fun, and we just don't know what's going to happen. There's a lot of new faces in new places with all these new rule changes. A lot of excitement.
Yeah, and I think real quick, I mean, we talked about the bags being a little bit bigger for stolen bases. I do think that's like the rule out of all of the rules that we've talked about thus far. I think that one seems like the least important that I think people are kind of overreacting to. I mean, people should be excited that there's going to be more stolen bases, but I don't think it's going to be something that, is so massive that it's like breaking the game. Like the steals are going to definitely be up a lot more. But I don't think it's something where like I saw people complaining about it that the bags are changing. Come on, there's no reason for that.
No, I
Um,
think it's supposed to I think the main reason was it somehow reduces injuries. If you bigger the bags, you
yeah, that I
slack.
don't get. That I don't get.
So I don't know. That's just the reasoning I've heard about that. But yeah, that seems like the least important of them. I'm not necessarily. I think what makes stolen bases more prevalent is more like the pitcher step off rule, not necessarily the bigger bases.
Right, right. Now I do wonder. Again, I just want to dive into this a little bit more because we kind of mentioned it, but like the effect that the pitch clock will have on pitcher longevity, because I feel like we've come to a era of baseball now where pitchers are so protected. Guys, we really see guys pitch past the sixth or even seventh inning anymore, where it used to be very common to see guys go 8 innings or go into the ninth. Like that was a lot more common back in the day. And now it's like, yeah, fifth, sixth inning, players are getting pulled. So I wonder too, potentially, is this going to implement more of a sixth starter amongst teams? Are we going to see more of a six-man rotation come along? And then also, how's that eventually going to affect teams come postseason time? Are they going to maybe change the rule where there's going to be more time? Because, postseason's a huge platform. Are we going to have more time in the pitch clock during the postseason? I don't think that's a rule right now, but like, could that eventually become a thing? Just because of the stakes and all that? Because pitchers are already on short rest in the postseason when they had no pitch clock. Now I really wonder how that's going to affect management. And we already have an era again where bullpen pitchers are kind of getting overused. That's where we're seeing a lot more Tommy Johns out of guys in the bullpen. Is that going to ramp it up even more? Are we going to see bullpen pitchers get used up even quicker? It's all super, super interesting. Yeah, we don't know any of this until the season really gets into it. Probably once we hit like August, we'll have a better idea of how this rule really affects pitching. But it's definitely really interesting.
No, yeah, no, I'm kind of fired up to see it all. The bullpen definitely more prevalent. Having a deeper, more kind of versatile bullpen. Guys who can pitch 1 or 2 innings where you don't have to pitch everyone every single day is kind of more important. So versatile pieces. It'll be interesting. The role of the manager seems to kind of become more important this year too, because there's
Mm-hmm.
more decisions you got to make. And I mean, we're kind of spoiled as Mets and Yankees fans because Cole, Rodon, Verlander, and Scherzer are four of the deeper guys pitching into games
Right.
in the MLB. So we'll see it a lot. But still, there's 3 other days like Kodai Senga. He's coming over from Japan where they throw 140 pitches 7 days a week.
Right.
They only pitch every 7 days and they throw 140 pitches. So he already has a transition. Plus, you got to work extra hard. So stuff like that's they're just interesting storylines to watch.
Yeah, no doubt. No doubt. Now, besides all these rules, because we're breaking down these rules a lot, let's kind of talk about spring training in general, because it's a great time for a lot of young guys to show up their what they have and their skill sets that they have. Now we might only talk about Mets and Yankees here for this segment because I'm going to be honest, I'm not super familiar with every single prospect and all these other teams. But what I am familiar with is how the Yankees prospects are performing right now. But Zach, I want to ask you, as far as Mets prospects go, how are they performing? Because I saw Brett Beatty did some good stuff the other day. Didn't he hit a
Brett,
home run?
yeah, Brett Beatty is tearing the face off the ball right now. It's good for him because him and Francisco Alvarez both barely played in AAA last year. The Mets kind of had some injuries, so they thrust them both onto the major league roster. Beatty was pretty solid and then he got hurt. But this year he is smoking the ball everywhere. And he has an uphill battle to actually make the Mets this year because they don't want to rush him there because next time he's on the Mets for good. He's the starting third baseman. And you have Eduardo Escobar as a solid player. But if Beatty's this hot, it gives the Mets another option and he can play third base. You can put Escobar at DH, and then you solve two problems right there. But
Mhm.
yeah, he's been super hot right now. His defense is looking strong. He's hitting to all sides of the field. He has some raw power. And Ronnie Mauricio, who's the Mets' top shortstop prospect, hit home runs in back-to-back days. Hit one 450 and then 407. So he's got some ridiculous power too. So yeah, these prospects are kind of fun to watch. I'm not sure. Unlike the Yankees, I think you're the young guys have a much better chance to make the roster. The Mets have Francisco Alvarez has like the least chance of any of these prospects to make the roster. Mark Vientos might have the best chance on the Mets to make the roster because he's just a pure right-handed slugger and he could kind of platoon with Vogelback maybe because we got to get Darren Ruff out of here. But yeah, Beatty and Mauricio are tearing the ball up right now. So that AAA Mets team in Syracuse to start the year could be fun to watch. But if Alvarez and Beatty do start down there and they start hot, there's going to be a lot of pressure to get them up fast.
Yeah, no doubt. And first of all, Darren Ruff becoming the Mets' new James McCann. I feel like fans freaking hate Darren Ruff. Oh my God.
Yeah, he only had like 60 bats last year. Like
I know. I felt like he played the whole season for the Mets. That's
like
oh
a
my God.
really dreadful sample size. And he said some weird things. And now he's like hurt. He's got like arthritis in his wrist. He hasn't played at all in the spring yet.
Oh
So
really?
I mean, I don't. He's only making $3 million this year, so it seems very easy to cut him, or I don't know, somebody might want him. He's good career numbers from the right side of the plate, but yeah, there's just kind of a dreadful year. And with the young guys, you never want to. If you're in a battle for position, you never want to be out because the other guys are just going to step right up and blow right past you.
Right, right. I do think though, I know the big prospect for the Mets right now is Francisco Alvarez, but I'm almost more impressed with what I've seen from Brett
Oh
Beatty.
yeah,
I think ceiling wise, I think Brett Beatty has a higher ceiling and has a better chance to become a real star player for the Mets, in my opinion. Just because, like you said, I feel like it's easier for him to kind of plug in soon. Alvarez, I mean, can in the next year or two, but I don't know. It just feels like what we saw from Brett Beatty so far last season. It just feels like he's the one that's going to get the shot pretty soon. And it feels like he has a really good shot at becoming a really good star franchise player for the Mets, I
yeah.
think.
The
More
one
than any other prospect, at least.
No, no, I get that. The one thing with Alvarez is there's knocks on his defense.
Right.
And again, he barely played in AAA last year. They kind of went from AA straight to the big leagues. So if you give these guys time, Alvarez makes more sense. We also have to remember he's 21 years old.
Right.
Like he's 21. He has plenty of time. So if you start him in AAA, the Mets signed Omar Narvaez this offseason to be the starting catcher and Nito to be the backup. And the one thing I have seen at spring training, that is a sneaky signing with Narvaez. I have no idea if he'll like he's a good defensive catcher. He's
Mhm.
not really an offensive catcher, just kind of the Mets type. But he's from Venezuela, and so is Alvarez. And these two are inseparable at camp. Everywhere you look, the old guy is training the young guy how to be a pro. They're hugging, they're having a blast.
Right.
So a signing like that, where you almost sign kind of like a veteran to kind of be like a coach player like that to show
Mhm.
Alvarez, really sneaky signing. I like that. Alvarez hasn't played too much yet this spring because the World Baseball Classic's coming up, so the Mets Narvaez is leaving. So when all of these guys are leaving to go to the World Baseball Classic, the entire Mets infield is leaving. When they all leave, that's five starters gone. Beatty, Mauricio, Vientos, and Alvarez are going to get the chance for a couple weeks to show off to stick. Alvarez, I think, has a tough time because there's two catchers ahead of him, and I'm not really sure how he jumps either of them right now. Beatty, strong spring, he can open up at third base.
Yeah, that's what I think too. And honestly, I wouldn't hate the Mets if they did do that. Like you said, I think Escobar's a good addition to have as a rotational DH. And I think too, like just because you start Brett Beatty for a good portion of the season doesn't mean that Escobar still can't get a lot of reps at third base throughout the
No.
season as well if you rest Beatty. So like, yeah, I think that makes the most sense for them. I think they should honestly just do that, especially because Brady has the reps last season when he came up and played. So if I was the Mets, I would that's probably what I would do. I would let him start the season there. You might as well let the young kid get the start now.
But on the other side of town, the Yankees have the intrigue, because one of the young guys is probably going to start at short. The
Mhm.
other guy may start at second. You have Oswaldo Cabrera, who I guess technically played two more games last year than the rookie status, so he's technically no longer a rookie, but he might start somewhere. You guys got the young guys. You have more young, intriguing storylines. The Mets don't need their young players now to
Right.
be good. The Yankees need their young players to go where they want to go.
Yeah, there's no doubt. I mean, it's funny because a lot of people are talking about the Yankees roster and the Yankees offseason additions. And I see a lot of Yankee fans complaining when the Yankees are given like an A or a B plus in offseason additions and like what their offseason was. And like I kind of get that, right? I mean, they only got Rodon, they re-signed Judge, and they got Canely. So nothing more than that maybe Yankee fans want, like adding a left fielder. And everybody's argument is, well, this is the same lineup as last season. How are they going to win a championship this way? I mean, the simple answer is what they have within the organization. I mean, that's the reason why we haven't made any more trades to get rid of these young prospects, because it's their time to step up now. I think it's going to be huge for this team going forward is if these young kids can step up. I think that right now, personally, Peraza, I think, has the best shot to start at shortstop for the Yankees this year. Unless Volpe, I mean, Volpe's looked really good so far in these first two games that he's played in. So if he continues at that pace, I think maybe he'll get a chance. But I still feel like they're going to be super careful with Volpe. I don't think they want to bring him up too soon and he really struggles and then, he never gets his mojo going. I think they might bring him up as the season goes on. Maybe if there's an injury to someone like DJ or Glaber or something, they'll bring him up and have him play second base or put him at shortstop and shift Peraza to third. Like move these guys around. But I definitely think Peraza is going to be the one. I think in his first couple games last year, I want to say he played in like 16 games, and I think he hit close to 300 and had a home run, and he looked pretty good. He looked pretty sharp. His defense looks really good. I just think, again, because he played last year, because I think he's like a year or two older than Volpe, and he played at a higher level of ball longer than Volpe. I think he's going to get the nod at shortstop. If it's one of the two, it's going to be Peraza, I think. And then as far as Oswaldo, I mean, who knows with him, right? Because he's mainly an infielder, but he could play left field. To be honest, I don't think the Yankees want to go into this season with Oswaldo Cabrera as their starting left fielder. I think, unfortunately, which I don't agree with, I think if they end up not getting another left fielder, they're going to run Aaron Hicks out there sometimes and have Oswaldo as a rotational guy. I just don't think they see him as an everyday left fielder, which I mean, I kind of get. You know what I mean? We saw it in the postseason with his defense, and those were hard catches. Those were difficult plays to make, but he just wasn't sharp enough looking to be a left fielder. Maybe he can work on that and get better. Again, if I was the Yankees and I had no other option at left field, I'm probably starting Oswaldo Cabrera. But I think maybe they'll see him as more of a rotational infield guy every once in a while, can play outfield. I think he's just going to be all over. Like, kind of like how DJ LeMahieu is, where he plays first one day, second the next, third the next. Kind of the same thing for Oswaldo, but where you also can put him in left field or right field. And it's really interesting now, too, though, because the Yankees openly admitted that they would put Judge in left and put Stanton in right. And that becomes really interesting, too, because that becomes like an everyday thing, which obviously Stanton's not going to start every day. That's just not going to happen. But it is proven that when Stanton does play the field, he's a lot better. He hits a lot better. He's a lot more productive at the plate. If he can do that and stay healthy, maybe he'll do it, I don't know, say there's 6 games in a week, maybe he'll do it 3, and then the other 3 they can give it to Oswaldo. And again, I don't want Hicks to be there, but someone like Hicks. But yeah, it's super interesting because, again, while this Yankees lineup is probably the same, a lot of their production is going to depend on how the rookies play when they eventually come up. And I think, again, someone like Peraza has the chance to do really big things. And if Volpe puts his heart to it and he continues to kill it this spring training and he gets called up, I think he's capable. I think the kid really works hard. He's got something the Yankees desperately need, which is speed. He hits the ball for contact, and his defense look pretty sharp for the most part. So, yeah, Yankees, their prospects right now are huge, and they're going to mean a lot to the Yankees' success this season if they do have success.
Yeah, I mean, Peraza was a starting shortstop in the ALCS. I think he's got to be the starting guy to go. Yeah. He's a year or two ahead of Volpe on the track. And if you look at their minor league stats, they're very similar. The one thing about Volpe, too, he's barely played in AAA. I'd let him rock down there a little bit, and maybe I'd give him some reps at second because Peraza does profile to be a little bit of a better defensive player, too. So I would let Volpe go down there. He needs a little more time, too, because if you look at his stats, his numbers have dropped every level he's increased. So you don't want to rush him up to the big leagues. There's no need to, especially when you have Peraza. And I love the Stanton and right and Judge and left thing. Personally, though, I would have Peraza play short and I'd have IKF play third.
I agree. I completely agree.
Awesome defensive third baseman. Yeah. And then I have DJ DH to spell him because he's been so injured the last 2 years. Let him DH a little bit. I think that gives you the best combination of offense and defense. Because if IKF hitter, that's perfectly fine. IKF his average power, so people knock him. But no, I love that. I would that if I was Aaron Boone, that's my opening day kind of lineup. And then, like you said, Stanton can play 3 of 6 or 7 games out in the outfield, and then maybe Aaron Hicks plays 2 of those. Oswaldo plays 2 of those, and then Josh Donaldson can pop in and play 2 or 3 at third base for IKF. So you
Exactly.
kind of spell everyone. So your crappier players don't get forced to do more than they need to. And like Josh Donaldson, if he's in a bench role, that's a pretty damn good bench player. So
Exactly.
I think that's how I would personally do it. Give Volpe more time to develop. I think that's kind of what he needs. A little more time down there. Same, and then Jason Dominguez too. Obviously, he needs more time. He's young. It is funny because we talk about Beatty and Volpe and Dominguez hit that big home run yesterday. The one thing I do take is you got to take a little bit of grain of salt here on spring training. Kyle Higashioka hit 8 home runs last year in spring training.
Like
Like
Barry Bonds.
yeah, you do have to remember this is spring training. You got to look at the pitchers these guys are hitting home runs off of. There could be AAA pitchers. They could be single A pitchers for all
Right.
you know, because these teams are just playing their whole minor league systems on one team right now. So I
Mhm.
mean, if you watch the Mets game, I'm a Mets junkie. I know everything about the Mets. Every day they bring in 5 pitchers never heard before. So they're single A pitchers. So you do have to take some of that with a grain of salt and not push like this guy had a great spring, so he must be the starting third baseman.
Mhm.
These guys are young kids. You don't want to ever get in a situation where you call them up and then you have to send them back down. You don't
Yeah.
want that. You want to call him up. When you call up Volpe, he's the shortstop of the second baseman forever. When you call up Brett Beatty, he's the third baseman forever. So you want to be careful here.
Right. And part of me wonders too if this whole like not rushing Volpe up thing kind of coincides with Glaber Torres's contract. They've thought about trading Glaber in the past. I don't think they're going to do that this year. I think Glaber's going to have a much better year this year. You saw him kind of get back on track last season. And really when he took a dip, it was because the trade deadline, and he admitted recently that when he heard that he might get traded, it did phase him a little bit and it hurt his production. And then we saw him have a great, I think it was a great September when
Yeah,
he got his mind back on track. So I think that he's going to have a good year this year, but I think after this year or after the year following, they can move on from Gleyber Torres. So I wonder if after this year or the next, they're going to move on from Gleyber Torres and have Volpe be the um, everyday starting second baseman. You also have to remember too that after this year, Josh Donaldson's going to be gone.
true.
So that's another infield positional player
So
that
it's
they
IKF. Yeah,
yeah, right. So that's another spot they can move in because I've also heard, like, I think I mentioned it before, but I've heard the mumble and grumblings that they're thinking about potentially putting one of the kids at third base, whether it be Peraza or Volpe. I've heard they've had Volpe take some reps at
sure.
third base during spring training. So that's also a question too. Is like, okay, so if Donaldson and IKF are done after this year, will they consider bringing up Volpe and have him play third? I mean, that could also be as well. So I think it's easier for a shortstop to move to third or second than for a second or third baseman to move to shortstop. Just because shortstops, I feel like
Oh,
have
yeah,
that
yeah.
all around defensive thing. Yeah, you know what I'm talking about. Um, so yeah, so I think that's something that they're going to wait on. I think that's why again they're not in a rush because they kind of have all the positions filled at this point, especially if you are to bring up Peraza and Oswaldo. I think it just makes the most sense to kind of let him stew for another season, or at least half the season. Like, I don't mind if there's an injury to someone like DJ or Donaldson or Glaber, and you bring him up halfway through the season. That's fine, like around the All-Star break. But I think to bring him up to start the season would be a little bit too soon.
Hey, and you talk about young shortstops. Gavin Lux torn ACL out for the
Exactly.
season. He was going to start at shortstop there for the Dodgers. The Dodgers are the team with the prospects to watch. They have Miguel Vargas, who's going to be a starting infielder. James Outman's going to be a starting outfielder. The scary things about teams like the Mets, Yankees, and Dodgers, they spend and have good prospects coming up. That's a scary thing. You have cheap good players and good players making money.
Yeah,
The Dodgers are interesting because Gavin Lux, this was the year he was finally going to put it together as the starting shortstop.
yeah, he did
Miguel
good last
Rojas
year.
was I didn't realize Miguel Rojas was traded to be the backup shortstop. He was just going to be an everyday backup, good veteran defensive backup. He's now thrust into a role and he can't hit for crap. So that's interesting there. They have him and a young rookie in the middle of their infield. They are interesting to watch from a prospect. That's a big blow. You never want to see anyone get hurt, especially the first week of spring training. They are fascinating to watch now because their payroll fell off a cliff. They didn't spend any money this year aside from JD Martinez and Noah Clowndegaard, and that's all we got. So that's interesting, very interesting for the Dodgers prospect wise. Brutal injury for Lux, but we'll see. We'll see.
Yeah, real quick, and I can just throw in there about the Dodgers. At this point now, it's just the Padres' division to lose. At this
I
point,
think
I,
so.
I don't see it as any other way unless they lose a bunch of guys to injury. It's the Padres' division to lose, and if they don't come up and finally win the division this year. It's nothing short of a failure. So,
But
especially after all the
these
respect.
are the young Dodgers. You never know. Their three prospects could be the three best players in baseball this year.
Yeah, no doubt. And real quick before we close things out, I just want to throw in one more thing about Anthony Volpe. If they do decide to bring him up because he continues to kill it in spring training, I wouldn't hate that either. Because at this point, if the kid looks ready, he looks. I'll trust the Yankees on that if they think he's ready. Just because they've been protecting him so much so far, that if they finally feel like he's ready and want to bring him up, I'll trust him on that. I wouldn't hate that either. Just because I think that Donaldson doesn't deserve to get starting at bats anymore. And IKF doesn't deserve to get starting shortstop reps anymore. So again, if they do feel like it's the time, they're ready, it's fine. But otherwise, I'm fine with letting them stew. All right, everybody. Well, thank you again for joining us on Around the Bases. This was a nice little discussion on the rules and a couple of prospects we're eyeing up. Nothing too long, nothing too crazy, but we just wanted to throw that knowledge your way. Stay tuned for more content. As always, follow, like, and subscribe to us on YouTube and TikTok. And we're going to be having YouTube shorts come out pretty soon, I think. So everybody stay tuned for that. Thanks again for watching. We'll see you again soon.